Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my amendment will help to safeguard the privacy of America's farmers and ranchers that work day and night to produce the food the world relies on. This amendment would give our agricultural producers and food processors the opportunity to impose unmanned aircraft restrictions around their operations upon a formal request to prevent drones' unauthorized access to their land. In 2016, Congress created a process by which critical infrastructure facilities can impose restrictions on drone flights around their operations. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency designates the food and agricultural sector as a critical infrastructure sector, which is also vital to the United States. That is imperative to our national security and our economic security. In the event of emergency situation or disaster, protection of our agricultural land across the country is going to be vital. Intelligence officials have even gone so far as to warn that America's agricultural industry has been targeted by suspicious drone activity, potentially by domestic terrorists or other bad actors. Food security is national security, plain and simple. This amendment would ensure that we give our farmers, ranchers, and food producers the same ability to restrict the use of drones around these facilities that we give to amusement parks, outdoor facilities, and a variety of other interests that do not have similar national security implications. I urge every member in this body to support my amendment, and with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
To claim time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment, which would add animal feeding operations and meat and food processing facilities to a growing list of sites over which the FAA will restrict drone flights. These restrictions that currently exist are intended to be used for facilities where overhead drone activity would present a potential public safety and security concern, critical infrastructures like energy and oil facilities, and state prisons. There's no practical reason why animal agriculture facilities should qualify for this kind of restriction, particularly that having that restriction might endanger energy and oil facilities. These facilities do not involve sensitive or potentially hazardous operations as energy and oil facilities do in state prisons. These restrictions already exist to ensure the safety of such facilities, facility workers, and the public. The designation is not intended to be used to inhibit First Amendment rights, protect intellectual property, or help facilities avoid accountability. Allowing such exceptions is a slippery slope in restricting First Amendment rights as the national airspace is public space. This would delay FAA rulemaking to create these public safety restrictions by several months or years, sacrificing public safety to shield meat processing facilities and possibly endangering time that could better be spent with energy and oil facilities and state prisons. I urge you to side with public safety, energy and oil facilities, and state prisons and vote no on this amendment. And I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Tennessee reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to point out that this amendment is structured and written in such a way that this does not apply to all agricultural and food production facilities. It only applies to the very few largest operations in the United States, the ones that in fact supply 80% of the food production in this country. There is a national security risk here. We've talked at length in this chamber all the time about how agriculture is becoming a national security issue, and with that, I would just like to encourage all of the members in the House to vote for this amendment, and I reserve the remainder of my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Tennessee reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate having the opportunity to submit this amendment, and with that, I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
I will close reciting the previous argument that this is not about protecting public safety and First Amendment rights would be violated. I look back to see my crowd here to see how we'd win this voice vote, and it looks very daunting. I feel a little bit like Davy Crockett at the Alamo, but nevertheless, I continue to voice my opposition and ask those of us who are here to vote no.
The gentleman from Tennessee.